David Fetter, Executive Editor Technical for Prepared Foods Media. Welcome you to another in our series of trending topics in food product development. Today is a special one. We're going to be chatting with Ever After Foods Limited CEO Eyal Rosenthal, and we're going to discuss his advances in bringing sustainable cultivated meat products to the mass market through cost-effective production. Welcome, Eyal.
Thank you, David. I've been looking forward to our discussion.
There's a lot to dive into, so let's just start. What do you consider is the main hurdle to cultivated meat entering the mainstream marketplace? Because we've been hearing about it for almost a decade. So, why isn't it here yet?
Sure. So thank you, David. So I think it's a great question to start. So I think the primary hurdle today is tied to the actual path from, moving from benchtop science to scale-up manufacturing, which is really about scalability and cost. So, while there are now probably, 150 companies or even more operating in the space, and some of them are extremely well-resourced and have been invested for many years. But I don't think that a single one of them actually showed sufficient productivity at scale for commercialization. And the reason is that most of them, if not all, are actually using the same technology system, which is based on the so-called suspension stir tank bioreactors. And as this is so-called considered the gold standard in the market. And just to give a brief of what it is, so stir tank are basically vessels with mixer that generate very high mechanical stress at large scale. And animal cells and especially tissues cannot tolerate it. Natural animal cells cannot grow in such mixers without being adopted to the process, either by spontaneous or genetic modifications. And such manipulation limit the nature of cells to create mature tissues for achieving meat parity. This is why most of the industry ended up with unstructured cell slurry rather than the actual meat.
Right. So when you say it's a stirred tank, you don't mean it's just it's constantly stirring? Is that the
There is
constantly
it's a vessel and there is a mixer inside that is
wow,
stirring
like a
it.
giant blender. Yeah.
Yeah, you can look at it this way. So again, and some of the companies, they're expecting, to produce it in a very large vessel, such as those, over 20,000 liters, and some will claim over 250,000 liters. And
Whoa,
again,
it's
this will
huge.
result in even lower productivity and very high capital cost. So putting the whole idea of making cultivated meat at a high risk.
Wow.
I think it's important to say here that essentially the industry was trying to apply biopharma processes, for making cultivated meat. So
Oh.
and in pharma, you are making small volume, high value product, but in food and in cultivated meat, it's actually the other way around. We are making a high volume, low cost product, and therefore you need to have to do it differently. And this is why I think continued bioreactor innovation is needed to drive the production of cultivated meat that is more similar to the traditional meat.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the other thing about biopharma processes is they are making particulate matter, small, microparticulate matter or liquid or not whole tissue. So that goes back to what you first said, so very impressive to take it and go in the opposite direction, but the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
So how did Ever After Foods get over those production hurdles? Since you said it's the gold standard, I mean, you're having to start from scratch. So
So we at Ever After we grow cultivated meat in a totally different way. So we develop a proprietary bioreactor system for cultivated meat that overcomes these critical challenges that we mentioned. Our process takes a different, as I mentioned, but yet proven approach. So instead of actually adopting cells to grow in an inefficient stir tank bioreactors, we invented a system a bioreactor system adopted for natural cells that actually creates complete mature tissues, and we proved it at scale.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and our process does not compromise on the quality of cells as we cultivated these stem cells and provide them the natural conditions for growth. We also protect them from the intense mechanical stress typical in stir tank environments.
Okay.
Um,
Well, you see, because you're talking about these stem cells, where are they coming from?
so the stem cells, we are taking a biopsy from the animals.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, it
And
can be either an embryo or adult stem cells, it doesn't matter. And then we need basically to grow them, to proliferate them using those bioreactor systems.
okay, and what are the sort of conditions are they in? Are they in well, you go ahead and tell me.
Yeah, no. So the process is in a simple way. We take a biopsy. We then have to feed them with the right nutritional, similar to what they need to take when they are, when the animal is actually growing in the field. So you have to provide them with the minerals, the vitamins, the amino acids, the sugar, the salts, and all those minerals are basically growing. All those nutritionals are getting actually, you grow them in these vessels which are called the bioreactors until you do and then they are proliferating and they're growing until they get to an actual mass, and then you go for harvesting.
So
Um,
it's like creating the natural conditions that they grow in anyway, but in small
yeah,
scale, and then
yeah,
building that up.
in
So
a protected environment using the bioreactor system.
wow. So and then you said, then it grows into whole tissue. That brings up another hurdle with cultivated meat because it seems the biggest barrier has been recreating the actual shape of muscle meat tissue. I know some competitors have come up with steaks, but they're minute steaks, little flat
Yeah.
steak kind of thing. So, or they might not have been able to get, beyond just the small clumps that replicate ground beef. How did Ever After overcome that significant challenge?
So at every after food system, we include our proprietary edible scaffolds. Those are scaffolds allow the cells to attach and proliferate and differentiate into mature three-dimensional tissue structures. So by providing the cells with their natural growth conditions, we achieve better similarity to meat in both organoleptic and nutritional content.
Wow. Now, with scale up, of course, you get the challenge of sustainability and cost effectiveness. So, how's Ever After approaching the sustainability question?
I think first and foremost, by recognizing that cultured animal protein is not a fad, addressing food security, health, and sustainability, and animal welfare. Cultivated meat is really the future of food. I think this is kind of, where knowing that global meat demand is predicted to far outpace what the planet natural resources can support. And cultivated meat is provide an animal-friendly alternative that can deliver even more nutrients and protein while dramatically reducing the environmental impact, such as the greenhouse gas emissions and the agricultural land and water usage. Cultured meat is therefore the very essence of sustainability.
Hmm.
Um,
So now with your bioreactor design, how much how much can it process compared to competitors, like the ratio of input versus output,
Yeah,
how
so our process is more efficient and uses less energy, drastically decreasing the negative environmental impact. We considerably reduce the amount of media. The media which I mentioned to you before is the actual feed that we provide to the cells. And so we reduce the amount of media used to produce the cultivated meat. And thus significantly we are boosting the production and reducing cost, but our system also save cost on the other front, which is really our manufacturing plants required significantly lower capital expenditure and production cost.
Wow. So you've been able to drastically reduce the amount of media needed, to grow, say, a pound of meat.
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember. It takes something like, from what I understand, it takes something like, you know, uh, uh, 50 liters of water and
Just
energy to create
a
like a,
burger, yeah.
yeah. And so how does your system compare?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, our system is much more efficient in few aspects. We are using much less resources, which is the media.
Mhm.
So because we can use our system allows for media reuse. And thus there is
Oh,
like a system which we can reuse the media, which is the media is the major cost in cultivated meat. And also the size, which I referred before, is meaning, that the size of the bioreactors are much smaller. So we are not expecting a huge vessels in our system, which of course has the all implications with regards to the plant facility, the size of it, and the capex that are needed when you are dealing with. So all in all, we are focusing a much cheaper way to grow cultivated meat.
I'm kind of blown away by the fact that you could reuse the media. I mean, if you think of it, in animal husbandry, the only way you can reuse the media that it takes to, grow a cow is by turning it into fertilizer, because all you get is poop. So, the fact that you can cycle that back into the system is phenomenal. So that's very
That's
impressive.
part of the innovation.
Yeah. So, let's talk about the final product, because quality has also been a major challenge in cultured meat. Um, I've only been able to taste like one cultured product in a very small, and it was something was off a little bit. Do you know what I mean? But this is years ago. This is early stages. So, with quality, a challenge, as far as flavor and texture, in those first gen products that didn't meet expectations. Have you conquered that problem? And if so, how?
Yeah, look, flavor and texture are absolutely critical to success in the cultivated meat space and in any food product,
Exactly.
I acknowledge that, some first generation products, like everyone in every space, haven't reached probably the perfect meat parity yet. Although I can tell you that this has been a huge progress, of course, since a decade ago. Um, Again, a simple slurry is not of cells is not really a meat. So there's still work to be done on that as well. At ever after we are getting much more from our cells. So the biological advantages of the cells developed in our system allow for us to reach a high meat parity. Our technology can generate additional protein and nutrients that create proper taste and texture. And we are confident the cultivated meat products of the years ahead will deliver delicious and satisfying culinary experiences that rival conventional meat.
That should be so. Back to scalability. How far along are you with reaching a level of scalability in production that we can start seeing cultured meat in the marketplace? I know, some companies were getting cultured poultry and fish, but and only just now. But how is it with, say, well, you're working predominantly on beef and even pork, right?
No, we're not doing
No
pork,
pork.
but
Okay.
we are working on few species. And look, we are positioned well in terms of scalable and production. As I mentioned, our current system, which is 35-liter pilot system, is producing more than 10 kilo of cultivated mass.
Wow.
Just to give you the comparison, other competing technologies will need to create a massive, not to mention inefficient, bioreactors to produce an equivalent amount. Currently, we are designing our next level of production, and our goal is to have that up and running by early next year.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, it kind of we bypassed my next question, which was how do you deal with kosher and halal with this? Because that's why I asked the pork question. I know there is research going on to replicate, pork in a cultured the cultured production, and the argument as to whether or not that's going to be kosher and halal certifiable. Have y'all faced that issue, that kosher halal issue yet?
Yes, of course. So obviously, there's been a lot in the news. Not a lot, but there's been few cases, of companies that actually managed to receive a kosher approval for the initial product, and this is a great achievement. And I think it shows, obviously, that that it's possible. So I think that in general, in the future, yes, we can make them kosher and halal. Um, for us specifically, we haven't submitted our product yet for that process, but we are, speaking with the relevant bodies around it.
Okay. And then are you seeking kosher halal? When you seek kosher halal, will you seek I don't know how halal does it. Kosher, has the Parav designation where it's considered neither meat nor milk, which
Yeah.
is important, not just for the kosher laws of separating meat and dairy, but also for vegetarians to consider whether or not it's meat. How is that
Yeah,
progressing?
it's a very, very deep discussion. It's really depending on so each company and the way they will do it is going to actually be different. So there is a difference when you take the actual biopsy or the cell in an embryo before it's becoming like so before it's becoming like an animal in a way, so
Right.
before you can do it, or you can do it after it will after you did like a proper slaughtering, so you can take it also from a dad. So that it's really depending, and then it will also impact if it's perv or not. Add to that, in the Jewish religion, there is also something which is about in Hebrew it's called Marit Ein.
Yes. Yes.
So which is like how do
Well, let me explain to our audience. It literally means a bad eye, a bad image, and it's yes, if you might be adhering to the letter of the law, but if you present an image that looks as if you are breaking those laws, that's just as bad because you could cause someone else to break the law.
Yes, it is possible to make it kosher. It is possible to make it halal, and there's already been approved by some of the companies.
So now, after scalability comes profitability, and it's been around a decade since the $300,000 cultured hamburger,
Yeah.
that first, shot over the bow. And now cultured dairy, however, finally mainstreamed, price comparable in the marketplace. I don't know if you know Paul Kolosoff with the Perfect Day Dairy. They've created a phenomenal product with this cultured dairy, precision cultured fermentation dairy. Cultured fish is coming close. You said next year you think you'll close in on scalable production. Is that keeping pace with price expectations? And I ask that both for you at Ever After Foods, but also just the industry in general, if it's getting to that point.
Yeah, look, even the best tasting 300,000 or even $30 hamburger has no chance of becoming a mass market staple. As you mentioned, the scalability, and we've discussed it before, is the primary challenge, which of course means high cost to the consumers. And since pricing is dictated primarily by operational cost and scalability, I think only the innovative players that overcome these barriers will be able to unlock the promise of the cost parity. Our ability to efficiently produce high densities and of cultivated meat that meets all the taste parameters will break down the long-standing costs of price barriers.
Good. And I hope so. We've talked about, the barriers that are going to be at that stage. What can you tell me from the market standpoint on that same question?
Yeah, I think there is still a lot to be done before cultivated meat products will be available in a global mass, there are still issues to overcome from, tech challenges and creating production facilities to managing consumer perception, and there are still regulatory hurdles, to overcome. However, I expect that cultivated meat will be available on global scale within the next 5 years. That's kind
Hmm,
of, my two cents on the future prediction.
okay. Now, have you encountered, here's an interesting, have you encountered any technical interference, not marketing, not regulatory, but like actual physical roadblocks and, not to say anything negative, but maybe from meat and poultry producers, because I know some of them jumped on and then they jumped off, from cultured meat. So any interference from that side of the industry?
Um, as with any massive shift, there are, roadblocks of all kinds. And, we have not directly dealt with any issues from meat producers, but I imagine there probably have been some pushbacks. Reinventing how we produce and consume meat will be a critical component of a more sustainable food chain. We need to reshape our thinking of what is possible and what is best. As you probably know, Henry Ford back then said that if I'd ask people what they wanted, it would be faster horses. So as an industry, we need to educate all the stakeholders about the potential benefits of cultivated meat, and all players in the meat ecosystem will eventually have to evolve, to meet more sustainable production demands. But I think there is plenty of room, for all of us in the coming decade as demand for meat continues to rise.
Okay, so and so from what you've said, it sounds like we can actually expect to see, hopefully ever after foods, but beef, chicken, duck in the meat cases in our supermarkets within 5 years. So that's you know pretty fascinating. Are you working with any of the food companies or other cultivated meat companies to provide that end-to-end solution for cultivated meat?
Yeah, yeah. So we are a platform technology. So we are working with both food companies and cultivated companies, as you mentioned. The idea is to provide them an end-to-end solution for producing cultivated meat. As we mentioned, there's still lots to be done and to overcome, from consumer perception to regulatory issues, and I think there is a primary concern regarding the misinformation which is being out there.
Mm.
But despite the continued challenges, our hope is to make it into the US market within the next 3 years, and it will start like any other innovation with early adopters. In this case, maybe it will be the vegan or the kosher that we mentioned before, audience, followed by the mass market. In the end, however, I think the mass market transition to alternative protein is really inevitable.
I like hearing you say that because I've been saying it. I think, this absolutely is the future. We cannot sustain, greater and greater and greater use of land, water, and resources to grow animals, in fields for food. And yet, most people out there are getting, their protein from animal sources. So there has to be that tipping point, and I think that's going to happen. I do hope it happens in the next 3 to 5 years. You've given me some eye-opening insight into that I think gives me a great deal of hope that we really are on the verge of this, and that's thanks to you know people like you and technology that, like I said, I'm very optimistic. I know we're out of time, and it's late by you. It's about 8 hours later by you. So I want to thank you for this, like, truly, truly fascinating insight into the just remarkable technology and future of cultivated animal protein. And I think the overall take home for our audience should be that, picking up a nice juicy steak from the store that is, in all respects undetectable from those that have come from a once living animal, but without being so, is a matter of when, not if. And then, we and of course, the cows, the ducks, the chickens. We sincerely appreciate the efforts of Ever After Foods, its colleagues, its technicians, and even its competitors who are joining in. We appreciate those efforts in the cultured meat industry. That's going to make that a reality. That nice juicy steak that came from a few cells instead of a living cow. So thank you again to our audience. I hope you enjoyed this first-person discussion on the future of cultivated meat, which is apparently happening right now. We invite you to check out our expanded offering of videos, podcasts, articles at preparedfoods.com. You'll find those right under the media menu, the videos and the podcasts. And on the site, you'll find more on-trend topics of interest to all food and beverage formulators, and all brought to you by top industry experts like Eyal Rosenthal at Ever After Foods. I'm David Fetter, Executive Editor Technical for Prepared Foods Media, and join us next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.